Welcome, everybody, to the next edition of the TreeLines podcast. I'm Paul Jeffries, Reforestation Advisor in Mississippi and Alabama, and joining me today is Blake Sherry.
Hi, everybody. My name's Blake Sherry, and I'm happy to be the new Reforestation Advisor for South Georgia, Florida, and Lower Alabama.
So today, Blake and I are going to discuss his previous career in procurement forestry, buying lumber, buying trees for sawmills in South Georgia. And we're going to discuss some of the events and some of the topics that he dealt with throughout that career that some people may think are important and may not be important, and other things that some people think aren't important that may be important. So Blake, today let's discuss some of the events, some of issues that you encountered at working as a procurement forester and working with private landowners that we'd like to try to mitigate here at Aubergine and try to help landowners with the quality of the trees that they are growing on their property. We like to work with those landowners so that they can basically cut off these problems, no pun intended, before they get to the end of the rotation of their timber investment.
That sounds great. No, I'd love to talk about it. I previously worked for Interfor. I was in charge of buying logs for a sawmill. Before that, I worked for a pulp mill, worked for International Paper, and I bought pulpwood for that mill and ran a small log yard for that mill. So I've by no means expert. I have probably about 8 years of procurement experience, but I did learn a thing or two within my time frame of doing that, and hopefully I can relay some of those experiences to landowners so they can get the most value out of their land.
Well, that's interesting, Blake, because you said that you also bought wood for a pulp mill, and I'd like to get into that as well. But let's start out talking about the issues that you encountered with buying wood for a sawmill. Like in this area in where I am, where I reside and have timberland in North Alabama, our pulp markets are basically non-existent anymore because we just do not have buyers for the pulp wood that we are growing. And in this area, as a landowner, I have to really be focused on the end game of what the stand is going to grow out. So can you start by just telling us what sawmills are looking for in the harvest that they are procuring, that you were buying for them? What were you looking for? What were basically the nuts and bolts of their demands on their products?
Yeah, so sawmills are different across the board. They're different because they've been built at different times, different machinery, different capital upgrades over the course of time. But generally, all sawmills are looking for the same thing, and that is they want the right size log that is optimized for the product that they're making. They want a log of a certain quality that is optimized for the product that they're making, and they want to run efficiently. And some put more work towards running efficiently than others. So the sawmill that I bought wood for was a dimensional lumber mill. So that's, stuff that is used in home building, decking, all that kind of stuff. And so not really a specialty product mill. I would say that most mills being built and upgraded today are less specialty product. You've seen a huge investment from these Canadian companies like Interfor was or is, but Camfor, West Fraser, buying mills in the South, upgrading them, investing money in them, and generally speaking, they are more so geared towards more conventional dimensional lumber products. I worked at a big log mill, and I do air quotes on big log is because the definition of big log has changed over time.
Right.
25-inch butt is a big log mill now. It comes down to operational efficiency. The main market drivers really on dimensional lumber are 2x4 and 2x12, and 2x4 really being the big one, because that's the number one product used in home building. And if you look at your house and the studs and everything like that are in your home, you're mainly looking at 2x4s.
Right.
So even more so, the capital investment that's been pushed now is into upgrading and improving on 2x4 production. So a lot of these brand new greenfield mills that have been built, their max butt diameter is actually 18 inches because there's just no need to further invest in a mill that is going to produce lower value products like 2x6, 2x8, 2x10. 2x12 is still a product that is sought after, and some of these older mills that have had money put into them, especially ones that have a head rig, they still, kind of chase after the 2x12 market. But
That's interesting because one of the goals of our podcast is to dispel myths. And one of the myths that is out there is I see landowners all the time walk into a stand of timber and they walk in and there's all these large trees that are just, I mean, massive. And they're thinking that, oh man, this is a high valued stand of timber because there's large logs, the trees are big, they're older, and that, according to what you're saying, that could be just right the opposite. So it is possible that for a log to grow too large for the sawmill, and the sawmill can't handle it, and thus it could be downgraded back to pulpwood.
you have to be mindful of the market that you have to your area, though. There's some areas that there is a big log market still out there, and people are willing to pay a premium for a big log. Generally speaking, though, that's not the direction that the industry is moving. It is possibly not in the best interest of a landowner to kind of seek out a big log market when once you do the financial analysis and see that getting paid a little bit less for chip and saw now is way more valuable than getting paid a little bit more for a big log, but it takes an additional 20 years to get there.
You're spot on there talking about markets, and you've got to be aware of the market in your area. In Mississippi, we have recently had a large increase in new state-of-the-art sawmills that have come in to this area. Now, there are a couple of procurers, buyers of the larger logs, and those logs are going to a product that is called plywood, where they are actually taking those larger logs and they're not cutting them into lumber like, say, a conventional sawmill is. They're putting them on a lathe and they're spinning them and they're spinning it off in sheets to make plywood. You've got to know your buyer, you've got to know your user, and that's where it's really important for someone like a private landowner to consult or to use a consulting forester that may have that education, that knowledge background of the buyers and and what are the products that are coming out of that area and what those buyers are looking for.
No, I agree. Again, being mindful of your market and knowing what is going to bring the best return within the time frame that you have to grow a stand of timber. Because now, when you look at the input cost to just clear cut a track and then haul it to a mill, when I first started, it was significantly cheaper to take a load of logs from the woods to a mill. Within the course of 10 years, the average haul rate has doubled for how much it costs to pay a log truck to take it from the woods to the mill. And where has that come out of? Most of the time, it does come out of the landowner's pocket. Searching for a better specialty market that's 80 miles away may not be as conducive as servicing the sawmill market that you have that's 40 miles away, because you're getting penalized twice as much as you were 10 years ago,
Right.
by trying to seek out that higher market that's further away.
I want to back up to something that you said earlier about the sawmills that had an optimal butt size. And let's talk about that. And I want to define like the butt size is, on a tree, saw timber quality tree, the first 16 feet above a half-foot stump. So your stump is about a half foot to a foot tall. Above that, the first 16 feet is what's defined as the butt log. And when I was teaching measurements at Mississippi State, it was always known, and I taught that first 16 feet, or the butt log of the tree, was the most valuable portion of a tree because it contained the most volume. When you're talking about the butt log and these specialty mills, I have some friends, personal friends and former students of mine, that are procurement foresters for the new mills in Mississippi. And in talking to them, I asked them, what is your preferred size log to feed your mill? And amazingly, they came back to me and said that their optimal butt size was 11 inches, which is really not a large tree. So can you talk more about that and why that's important to the sawmills? I mean, if the sawmills had it their way, every tree would be the same size. So can you talk about, how that impacted you as a procurement forester and what you were looking for in your day-to-day routine?
Really, the failure of ArborGen so far is that we have not figured out how to grow a perfectly square
Right.
tree. Because the outside 2 inches of pretty much everything is chipped away.
Yeah. The
And
slabs. I mean, that's what you call your slabs.
yeah, so you get your outer edges chipped away, and then you get some boards that are edged off the sides, and then you have that center cant. So every sawmill has a target butt diameter. They have a target small end diameter, so that'd be the top of the log. And they want an optimum ratio of efficiency in the sawmill and product output. And so you set those targets kind of as the middle ground between what is size log is going to give us the most operational efficiency and the best product output for where the lumber market's at. And this is,
Right.
this is a dimensional lumber mill. This is a specialty log mill. So for most mills, they are trying to basically eliminate as much waste. And when I say waste, a sawmill doesn't waste anything. They sell chips to the paper mill to make paper. They sell bark to a lot of times bark's used to burn in boilers to power mills.
Mhm.
They sell the shavings, they sell the sawdust. I mean, it's kind of everything's used, but those products don't make as much money as sawing lumber. Solid wood product is ultimately why the sawmill's in business. So to each mill, depending on their setup, is looking for something that's going to minimize that amount of waste and produce as much of clear wood in that, not just the first log of the tree, the first 16 feet, but the next log, and the log after that. So with the example you're talking about, where they want an 11-inch butt, you know, 11 inches outside, 2 inches is chipped away. So now you're looking at what, a 9-inch cant, and so allowing for kerf and allowing for some outside edge boards. It sounds like what they're again optimizing for is something that would produce a 2x4, where you
Right.
could get like an 8-inch cant, and then you could split that down the middle, and that's a 2x4 size mill. Um,
Exactly. And that's what, as you alluded to earlier about that being the highest value, the highest demanded, whether two by fours. And that's what these mills are looking for. Well, that brings us into, you mentioned something there that makes me want to ask you also about how do sawmills treat waste and define what exactly waste is in a sawmill. Plus, can you talk about how valuable it is for a sawmill to minimize that waste and how valuable straight trees, uniform trees, because you also alluded to, one thing that we have failed at in genetics is producing a square tree that has no taper, that is only has a one limb at the top, just perfect. And while obviously that's impossible to produce that type of tree, talk about some of the issues that you encountered with, I guess, defects that impacted the sawmill's production.
So most every sawmill I know of has coals. So
Mhm.
coals are basically weight penalties for loads of wood that come in that don't meet certain quality specifications. And a scaler will look at a load and coal the load, and then also do rollouts on a yard to see what's in the middle of the load, to see if someone is trying to, you know, send something that is less than the average quality that the sawmill is looking for. So there's four major coals that Interfor had, and the biggest one that recently found in the project, I kind of knew it to be true, but it was reconfirmed in this project that I did recently, is kind of encompassing crook, dogleg, sweep. And On the seedling side, normally you just call that straightness. Sweep is a gradual move away from center line, and if it's over a certain number of inches, then that's something that could be cold. And then a crook or a dog leg, that's a very obvious abrupt movement in the log away from center line. And the reason it's such a big deal at a sawmill is, you have these modern day curve saws that they can move with the shape of the log, but they can move like that. They can't move like that with the shape of a log. So it's a operational efficiency issue where if you have something that has too much crook, dogleg sweep, and it gets stuck in a saw, you now have downtime related to pulling that log out, and you're losing your conversion cost is going up for every minute that you're down, and you have an issue with byproducts. And now a lot of times you're taking, say, a log that you possibly paid a lot of money for, and you're cutting out a 4 or 5 foot section of crook at the decks, at the log decks, that is going to get sent to the chipper and sent for fuel wood or sent for chips to the paper mill. You're taking several thousand pounds that you paid however many X dollars per ton, and now it's just getting chipped up. I would say on the genetic side, for what a landowner can control through good genetics and good silviculture, probably over 40% of the culls are derived from that. When it comes to sweep, when it comes to canker, when it comes to excessive knots, and that's just what is sent to the sawmill. That's not including what all these loggers, who are usually the ones who are paying the culls, gets deducted out of their check at the end of the week because they're the ones that decide to send it. They're in the woods very often saying, I don't want my check to go down. I get paid on production, and it's highly variable. There's some loggers that they will spend way more time than it probably benefits them to clean up wood as much as possible in the woods and send it to the sawmill.
That's great advice. Well, again, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences with us. It's been most insightful, and I would like to thank our listeners for tuning in to this episode of the TreeLines podcast. I would encourage each and every one of you to go to our website, www.arborgen.com, and check out our website. And if you should be listening to this and are not on our TreeLines list and do not receive our TreeLines, please contact us or go to our website and request to be added to TreeLines, and you will receive our bi-monthly email. Thank you very much for joining us today. Have a great day.